folks, this is Raymond Foster. I hope you're doing great. Recently, I've been travelling. I went to a rally, a protest, at a town in New South Wales called Nimbin. This rally was in regards to corrupt laws enforced by corrupt individuals within the government. So tyranny enforced on the population, which impedes on human rights to partake in activities and substances which are proven to be medicinal and are even sacred. Religious and spiritual practices which can be traced back thousands and thousands of years before the dawn of civilization, even to Proto-Indo-European tribal nomadic people. So the nomadic tribal people of us Westerners, Western kind, the Proto-Indo-European folk, before we settled anywhere and created any nation, when we were nomadic tribal folk, we had religious and spiritual ceremonies where we consumed the substance cannabis. The only reason cannabis exists today is because our white Western Proto-Indo-European ancestors propagated the crop for spiritual and religious use. So the only reason we have the plant cannabis on the planet today is because ancient tribal white folk, when we were nomadic tribal folk living off the land, we collected the plant and propagated and planted crops and spread it around the world. That's why there is also horses in all places around the world too. They used to only exist in the steppes, the Caucasus Mountains, that area, where we tamed horses, we created horses from a wild beast which was similar to a horse but not quite what a horse is, and we found wild cannabis in that area. Again, ancient Indo-European tribal peoples who were nomadic before white man ever settled down and built any city. We developed horses and cannabis and cattle. So there are three fundamental parts of our culture that go back for thousands and thousands and thousands of years, since the dawn of time, since before recorded history. And we only know about it because of archaeological findings, where we've found shamans with bags of seeds, shamans with chops and bowls ready to smoke out of. Again, from thousands of years ago. And we know that we only have cannabis all around the world now because it was propagated by those folk who had it first, and they used it. Their shamans used it primarily for spiritual worship, for spiritual practice, and for healing. So that's what the essence, the underlying core, the spiritual calling of the rallies, the protests, the Mardi Gras at places like Nimbin are all about. The legalization of plants like cannabis, which are sacred spiritual plants, and they are medicinal plants. So fundamentally, ultimately, it's actually religious discrimination and racial discrimination, anti-whiteism, to outlaw and take away the use of cannabis from our folk, from our people, because it is a sacred traditional plant that has been used religiously for thousands of years. So, for example, if you won't let someone wear their cross, their Christian cross, that's religious discrimination. It's against the law in Australia. You can get in a lot of trouble for it. Less these days than you used to be able to, because of anti-whiteism, but and the corruption anyway, and the taking away of those individual rights and the enforcing of tyranny. But in the same way, that means the reality is that it's actually religious persecution, it's religious discrimination to take away cannabis. It would be like making the Christian cross illegal, an illegal object, a criminal object to possess. There's laws against doing that. So in the same way, there should be laws against making cannabis illegal. So it shouldn't just be legalized, it should be decriminalized and treated like any other plant. In saying that though, it shouldn't be abused, it shouldn't be used just recreationally all the time as a drug for fun and for partying. It should be used in the traditional sense as either a medicine or a spiritual religious substance, like a psychoactive substance that allows you to tap into the quote-unquote spirit world. All right? If you're not smoking cannabis for one of those two reasons, medicinal or to tap into the spirit world and go on shaman journeys and progress yourself spiritually or help to heal other folks spiritually, then you're not using the plant correctly. And you shouldn't. You should put it down. Sort yourself out. Right? Because you're just basically a junkie, if that's the case. You're a druggo. Right? And you give actual proper cannabis users like myself a bad name and a bad image. You take away our rights, our religious freedoms to express these spiritual and religious practices, because you make it like it's a criminal party thing, you know? Anyway, travelling from Nimbin, I come to Byron Bay. In both places, I've been asked by a lot of folk all types of questions about spiritual understandings in regards to their path, their spiritual path, where they're at, their understanding, my perspective on it, and generally, yeah, how, or if I can give them any clarity or better understanding. Lots of people have been coming up to me over the past few days asking me about spiritual things. Yesterday, one happened to ask me, do you ever, because when people meet me, they usually say I look like Jesus and stuff like this. And so after starting to talk spiritually about things and, you know, divulging a few principles of theology and philosophy, this individual I was speaking to yesterday asked me, do I ever actually feel like I am the man Jesus? And instantly I just said, no, I've never felt that. I know I'm Raymond Foster. I know who I am. I'm a man called Raymond Foster who comes from a town, I was born and bred in a town called Ipswich in Queensland in Australia. And I'm just a nobody. There's nothing special or important about me whatsoever. And then I made the joke, my special power is that I'm ordinary. And he smiled and he's like, and you, yeah, that you let people be comfortable and be themselves. Like, so, which is a part of it. I'm authentic, I'm just me, which allows people to be themselves around me, so they appreciate my presence, because it allows them to reflect more and be more in tune with their own presence and their own self. Ironically though, I've never had any doubt, I've never had any confusion, I've always had perfect clarity that I am this man, Raymond Foster. And I answered old mate yesterday saying the very same thing. But I do know, in saying that, I'm not Jesus, that's a different man from me. But we're both the Christ. We're both the Creator. Because all things are, and so are you, mate. And then he's like, yeah, like, he understood what I was saying. And if you understand anything about theology and spirituality, it should make sense to you. Ultimately, the Creator, infinite, so is everything, in all things are in the Creator. So the dream is that we're all individual beings, we're all individual entities. But the reality is there's just one consciousness, one mind, which is the Creator's consciousness, which is life, the universe itself. And I know that that's what I am. I am that expressing through this human form, which is called Raymond Foster, not Jesus. Two different forms, two different bodies, two different people, but with the same Creator, with the same consciousness. And you are that same consciousness, and the consciousness of the trees and the wind and everything else in the world and everything in the universe is that same consciousness expressed through the multiplicity of infinite forms. So I thought that would be an interesting little nugget of wisdom, or even better, it's a tender. It's not a nugget of wisdom, it's a tender. It's a tendy, bro. Even better than a nugget. So you get a tendy of wisdom right there, and then to give you some more context and some more understanding about broader, more general principles and topics in regards to theology and religion and philosophy, spirituality, etc. I'll leave you with this little clip from an individual, another ordinary man named Rupert Spira, who, again, allows himself, he surrenders, okay? It's all about being able to surrender, to give up your desire to express yourself as an individual, and just surrender and allow life to express naturally through you. So this individual is an ordinary man, just like I'm an ordinary man. Nothing special about us, but we're just very, very ordinary, okay? And we'll leave you with what he has to say, and hopefully it can broaden your perspective and your awareness in regards to this understanding. So take it easy. Any questions, feel free to ask. I'm happy to answer them. And yeah, have a great day. Enjoy this little clip. I'll catch you next time.
Our self is not transformed or enlightened by this investigation we are conducting. Jesus, Ramana Maharshi, the Buddha, Rumi, Meister Eckhart, these were not enlightened people. There is no such thing as an enlightened person. They were just regular people like you and I. Regular people in whom the light of their being was not dimmed or endarkened by experience. For most people, experience is either so painful or so pleasurable that it has the capacity, either through our rejection of it or our attachment to it, of veiling the simple knowing of our own being. Our own being becomes so thoroughly mixed with the content of experience, either because it dislikes it so much that it wants to get rid of it, or because it likes it so much that it wants to hold on to it, that our being seems to lose touch with its knowledge of itself. The simple knowledge, I am. The most intimate, ordinary, familiar experience there is, becomes mixed with, and thus apparently limited by, the content of experience. Our being becomes dimmed or endarkened by experience. All we do here is to look simply and honestly at the nature of ourself, the nature of the experience to which we refer when we say simply, I am. When I say, all we do here is look at ourself, I of course do not mean to imply that we are one thing, and ourself is something else that we look at. We are that which knows or is aware. It is we, awareness, who softens the focus of its attention from the content of experience, and as a result comes back to itself, knows itself again as it essentially is. That is why this knowledge of the self is referred to as a recognition, a knowing again of something that is in fact always known, but is not clearly known. Very occasionally, this recognition of our essential, irreducible self or being takes place unsolicited and with such clarity that we never again return to the belief or feeling of being a temporary, finite self.